The Roman Empire is certainly one of the empires of all time, known for many things like fighting the Parthian Empire, and fighting the Sasanian Empire, and then fighting the Seljuks. Damn, okay, they love fighting people from Iran. Well, okay, apart from prolonged military conflicts with nations originating or operating from Persia, one of the other things that frequently comes to mind is, of course, the Roman road. Those were pretty good, but we actually are pretty lucky the Romans didn't invent railways, because if they did, they would, according to EU5 anyway, violate the laws of physics themselves. Now, I'm not going to claim to have discovered this, or at least claim to be the first to have discovered this. Checking bonuses Rome gets in a video game was frankly the full extent of this research, combined of course with some understanding of how the game itself works. Nevertheless, considering this has been out and about, I haven't seen many people talk about it, and hence I would like to publish this video to bring this to attention. Right, enough about that though. Before we do begin, a like will be appreciated as always, and a subscription would be amazing if you haven't already. The 100k sub goal is an ambitious one, as I've frequently mentioned, but well, I still do believe. Finally, if you're interested in grabbing EU5 or anything else from the Paradox store, please do use code Lemon Cake for a 0% discount. It does help support the channel. But with that said, enough self-shitting, let's get into the video proper. Right, here we are in EU5. I've done some very, very light modding, and what I mean to say by that is that we can actually go ahead and form Rome day 1 as Tunis. What I've really done for this mod, if it could be called that, is I've changed the conditional requirements for forming Rome to be the same as the conditional requirements for forming Carthage, but instead of requiring 70% of the land, I asked you to have like 7% of the land, basically. So in essence, it means that Tunis can go ahead and form Rome day 1 in this very specific universe. But this is mainly done, of course, as a demonstration of why Roman railways are so overpowered and so fundamentally broken, and also as a statement that I don't actually think it's necessary to be fixed. It's a win button if you already won the game, and while funny, it's okay, right? I think this is one of those things where you need to have won the game so much to actually use this in practice, as it really doesn't matter if you do. Anyway, that weird disclaimer aside, if we take a look at what forming Rome actually does, there's a bunch of advances, a bunch of them are really, really strong. The big one that comes to mind is Roman architecture. By decreasing building upkeep cost, and if you do a Rome run that is stacking crown power, if you have a lot of crown power, in essence, as you can see, our building upkeep cost is going up because we have very low crown power, but if you have, let's say, 40% crown power, you'll be decreasing that by like 15, 17, 20% later as well. So you'll be able to get massively reduced building upkeep costs to the point where a lot of buildings like armories are probably going to be giving you profit every time you build them, because they'll be creating goods demand, and there'll be demand that is going to be met on the market and demand that you'll then be able to tax. Anyway, bonuses like Roman architecture being really strong is not what we're here for. We're here for one specific bonus: all roads lead to Rome, and indeed they do. What this does is it decreases the proximity cost through roads by -5. What does this mean? Because if you look at this seems pretty good, but like you need to understand why this is so broken. Well, let's take a look at our capital, Tunis. We of course have Tunis over here looking pretty nice. Let's look at this province over here, which has a proximity of 81, and compare it to this province here, which has a proximity of 63. Well, if we take a look at this province and take a look at this 63%, we can see that the nearest proximity source is Tunis for +100, and the movement cost from Tunis to Zagwan is -36. Taking a further look, this means that we are paying a base cost of 40, which is then modified by it being a farmland +5, but then we have a law called reliance on local tribes, decreasing proximity cost through land, or just proximity cost by 5%. Development decreases it by 5.8 and of course our ruler's administrative ability decreases it by 3.9. You can get up to -10% based on your ruler's admin ability. That's all fine. So this +40 gets modified by these modifiers and ends up costing us 36 for this proximity. And if we look further down, for example here, this is 29% because this is going through the water. Does this go through? No, this will all go through Alphans, but we'll see why. If we take a look at Alphas instead, we're going to see that this is 81. Why? Well, because there's actually a road from Tunis to Alfax, namely a gravel road, and that gravel road is going to decrease the base proximity cost from 40 to -20. I realize with my pronunciations of these names I should not have picked Tunis for this demonstration, because I can't pronounce anything here. But anyway, the way that the math works is that we take 40, we reduce this by 20, that final 20 becomes our base cost per province, and then we multiply it by farmlands, by reliance on local tribes, and all those other same modifiers, which means that we end up paying a lot less, -18, compared to the -36. In fact, it's literally half because our base cost is halved. And this is how roads work. If you take a look at our road network over here, because these roads do exist and are already giving us a nice railroad graphic, we are reducing proximity cost down through the road. The gravel road, more specifically, decreases movement costs for our units by a decent chunk and the proximity cost by 20%. So far, so good. And it also gives some bonuses when you have roads built. Nice, no complaints there. What the Roman All Roads Lead to Rome Advance does is, if you take a look at that again, reduce the proximity impact through roads by a further -5. This means that if we then take a look at said road, this number of -20 becomes -25. Or, more practically, all gravel roads become as good as paved roads, because paved roads, as you can see here, produce proximity down to -25. That's because paved roads are actually better than gravel roads and are a good way of pushing proximity. And this is one of the reasons why road upgrade techs are a great way of then building up your nation and being able to push control a lot further. But what about the modern road? Well, that reduces it by 30. And remember, this is already pretty good because your base cost is 40. Reducing it by 30 means you're only paying 10 proximity instead of 40 per province. It's a pretty huge reduction. But then we have railways, and railways are incredible, decreasing proximity cost by -35, and that's already great, but your Rome, more specifically if we form Rome and take the technology all roads lead to Rome, that reduces the proximity cost through your railways by -40. That is to say that if we go ahead and build these railways, we would reduce every single place that has a railway from our capital, which I presume to be Rome at that point if you form the Roman Empire, to any province by -40 per step, meaning everywhere that has a railroad will have 100 proximity. If you would then go ahead and combine this with the fact that cores give you +20 control and 100 proximity, if you take a look at the maximum control breakdown here, gives you 75%, you'll have +95% control everywhere, meaning all you need is any extra 5% from temples or cities if you build that up, or making sure your satisfaction stays up high enough. Basically, it's a bit difficult to get the last 5%, but even in the worst case scenario, you'll be sitting at 90 to 95% control, assuming you have a low average satisfaction and you haven't got any other bonuses to it. So it's really, really strong getting that 100% proximity everywhere. And the other thing is, of course, it's going to infinitely chain. When every single step from this chain costs you 0, so if you take a look, if our province here of As Sevilla is getting its proximity from Alfax to -18, and then Alfax to Sabina to be -20, that means we're reducing this by these two numbers combined, but every single step in this proximity chain is going to be 0. This is actually even stronger than reducing proximity cost by 100% from, for example, going down centralization. Because yes, -100% proximity cost, every single province by default has a cost of 0, but this only works up until you start hitting bad terrain for pushing proximity cost. If we go locate a mountain, I'm hoping one of these is a mountain, but for example, a woods, right? That has a proximity impact of 12%. I mean, even a farmland is a 5% proximity impact, right? So you kind of have to, when you are chaining 100% proximity cost, be aware that you're not going to be able to perfectly push through places like farmlands or any other place that has an impact on proximity cost. Surely there's a farmland somewhere. There you go, there's a farmland here. Even farmlands are +5% proximity impact, so you have to stack beyond that. Again, the Roman Railroad doesn't care, because it reduces the base -40 to +40, or effectively the 40 cost is reduced by 40 and hitting 0. You can have +200% proximity cost. You can go fully decentralized, you can go do everything else as Rome, simply because you don't care about proximity cost anymore. Everything with the railroad is instantly outside of your capital, which, is pretty strong, and granted of how powerful it is, I mean, I know it's Rome, I know it's a relatively late game setup, so I can see why people are not talking about, but come on, infinitely moving speed railways. Wouldn't be the first time that's happened in a video game. Civilization 3 would pioneer the teleporting railroad back in 2001, but nevertheless, still at least quite a humorous situation to find yourself in. And I do hope you also now understand how railways actually work. Either way, because I haven't changed the effect of forming the Roman Empire, when formed, Rome will become a new capital. There is, of course, a very slight issue. We don't currently control Rome. So I'm going to go ahead and click this button and see what happens. But nevertheless, that is unfortunately all the time I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, with a special thank you to all my channel members, especially Ark, Solar, Lemon, Lord Zendika, Nikas, Nanhatan, Star72, The Awesome Rabbit, Best Pro Gaming, Grabmore Flavia, Lebarule, W Haste Sol, Anthony35, AC Napa, Conspiracy Pizza, Yukata, Danray, Malvi, Jack, Ryland, Stuart Allen, Andrew Black, Nebula, Zentronic, Toynet, and Aquabird. Oh, the game has enough checks in place. Unfortunately, forming Rome did not move my capital into Rome because I didn't own Rome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, so our capital didn't end up moving. But there you go, if you wondered what Rome looks like on the map, it looks slightly more pomegranate-y Byzantium. Not sure I like it. Maybe it looks better when there's more of it on the map. We'll have to experiment.